Happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of BrainScratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today. This episode is a bit like an episode of BrainScratch, Searchlight, and Case Cracked all combined. Imagine that you have a loved one who goes missing. You're afraid the worst has happened. There's been an on-again, off-again boyfriend that's in the picture. Police keep searching locations that he has been known to own or frequent time and time again. At one point, you even hear from prosecutors, there's going to be murder charges coming. But then a year passes. No charges. What is going on with the case of Cassandra Gross? That is what we're looking into today here on BrainScratch. Let's go ahead and jump in together and learn all about this case. From our first source, WPXI, here is an image of Cassandra. Cassandra Gross, 51 years old, went missing in April of 2018. Since then, her car and dog have both been found, but no arrests have been made in her disappearance. And there's a lot of detail to get into about her car and dog. One thing that I haven't heard about in all my research on today's case is her cell phone. I haven't heard anything about tracing her cell phone when it turned off. I do know from her family it does appear that it was shut off by the next day, the day after she went missing, but nothing in terms of the investigation. I have to say police are remaining very tight-lipped on this case. There's a lot of rapid activity. It makes you think that this is one of those cases that, you know, they're going to have someone in jail within a matter of weeks. In a way, they do. Let's continue. Where is this taking place? Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Latrobe is a city in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, in the United States. It's part of the Pittsburgh metropolitan area. Population is 8,338 as of the 2010 census. Known for a few things as well. It's the childhood home of children's television personality Fred Rogers, or as many of us recall, Mr. Rogers, and the banana split was invented there by David Strickler in 1904. Unfortunately, we're not talking about things that happy today in general, although a little interesting crossover is going to happen in terms of Fred Rogers later. But another article at WPXI just talking about several different things to know about this case. Cassandra Edlin Gross, 51 years old, and from the Edgewater Village in Latrobe. We're going to pull a map up and go through all the different locations. There's several locations that are involved with today's case. She's also a mother. She had just returned home from visiting her son for Easter. She was last heard from on April 7th after talking with her mother on the phone. Her mother reported her missing 3 days later. Effectively, she didn't show up for work on the Monday after this weekend that she was last in contact, and her family went to her home. We're going to hear some details about how they tried to figure out what was happening, where was she. But unfortunately, we still don't know where she is, even as of today. Here at a Facebook page called Across Westmoreland, there is actually a post from Cassandra. This dates back to September 25th, 2017. And effectively, her purse was stolen from her vehicle. And it looks like someone was trying to use the cards that were stolen from her purse. There's footage that she has, and she's basically asking for this person, hey, keep the cash, just give me my purse back. But there's a little note from her here. People are talking back and forth about, you know, what a jerk this guy is. How could someone do that? And she says, you know me, though. If you want something, just ask and I'll gladly give it to you. Heck, you don't even have to ask. Just let me know that you need something and I'm more than happy to get it for you if I can. I'd give you the shirt off of my back. Just a little insight into the type of person Cassandra was. We're going to hear a little more from her friends and family as we're going through all this today, too. She does have a Facebook page. Not a ton of information here. We can see a post on the day after Tom Petty died. She put up a quote by him and several pictures of Cassandra and her dog. Her dog looks so adorable in these photos. Baxter. Partially blind. I'm seeing some describe it as almost completely blind. And also deals, I think, with diabetes as well. But it's really clear that she really loves Baxter from just taking a quick look at her Facebook page here. Jumping over to WPXI, thank you to them for being such a good news source in terms of information on this case. Missing woman's friend, last one to see her, recounts their time together. So she had just had, I believe it was lunch or brunch with this friend, and then she was heading home. And that's kind of the last point of contact. Her friend says, "It's ripping me apart. She was just in a really happy place. Nothing out of the ordinary. I don't want to give up on her yet," her friend says. "She was bubbly. She was telling me about how she had just come back from her son's house for Easter. I'm still holding on to a little bit of hope that maybe whoever did this is keeping her somewhere. Maybe she's still alive," Dix said. Unfortunately, not a ton of information that really ties into the actual missing persons case at this time. There is a video interview with her here. It has a little more information, but nothing that directly connects to any pieces of, tracking down where was she planning to go after that, or, something along those lines. Unfortunately, it's more of a piece about a friend that is desperately missing her friend. She does say that they were in contact fairly regularly. They would talk all the time. As a matter of fact, they had texted even after they had had that meal together, but that was the end of the contact, that it just stopped. And that normally they were the type of friends that would, send a message, send an email to each other in the middle of the workday, that kind of stuff. Her friend never received anything after that weekend. State police find missing Latrobe woman's burned out car in park. So a very important detail that we didn't get from that kind of initial quick description. They didn't just find her vehicle, it had been torched, and it was so torched, practically unrecognizable. Thankfully, it was close to some train tracks. Someone that was working on the rails noticed the car. It wasn't, from what I understand, it was kind of off of the train tracks, kind of in a little bit of a wooded area, but they were able to get a sight of it, and they called it in and said, "Hey, it looks like there's a vehicle here that's been burned out." And it even took police a while to identify that it was her vehicle, of course, because it had been burned so badly. But this is happening April 12th, 2018. So, last point of contact with her is on the 7th. That earlier report says it took about 3 days for her family to report her missing. So we're having fairly quick action in terms of developments with this case. And you're going to see that really continues here for the first couple months. The vehicle belonging to a missing Westmoreland County woman was found burned in a park, according to state police. She was reported missing Tuesday, 3 days after her mother last heard from her. State police said Gross's Mitsubishi Outlander, I believe it was red, was found near railroad tracks in Twin Lakes Park on Tuesday evening. A Norfolk Southern Railroad employee called police after seeing the charred vehicle in a wooded area near the train tracks. I think something bad has happened to her, her mother, Kathy Gross, says. And Kathy has been working very hard, raising her voice for the past several years on this case, just trying to keep beating that drum about where is my daughter. There's a little bit of tension that goes on between the family and the police department, as we usually see in a missing persons case, but really not a whole lot outside of that. But now Kathy, I'm sure, also wondering, where is this prosecution that you guys told me was going to happen? What's the stopping block there? Do we have an answer on that? Possibly, but we'll get to that later. Her daughter's phone was dead the day after she spoke to her, and she got increasingly worried when Cassandra's father went by her house Monday morning. He went over there at 10 a.m. She wasn't there, and the dog wasn't there. And that's not like her to not call and say, "I'm taking the dog, I'm taking the day off," her mother said. It sounds like it was a regular thing for her family to go and help with Baxter, that, apparently she couldn't take Baxter to work. So her father would go to let Baxter out, let Baxter go to the bathroom, and then take him back inside. But they get there, she's not there, Baxter's not there, which is really kind of a big tip off for them. I don't think at that point they knew that she was missing from work quite yet. Her dog was found loose on the side of the road in an area that I'm seeing referred to as Beatty Crossroads. We'll take a look at the map here in a moment. And her mother, very quickly here in the investigation, comes up with this information. She thinks a man her daughter dated may know more. "I know he did something to her," Kathy Gross said. She wouldn't get a PFA because he said he had a hit list and he would kill her. PFA, I believe, is protection from abuse. So it sounds like it was a bad relationship. From all accounts that I'm seeing, the relationship was over. A lawyer for his side kind of makes it sound like they were still together, but I'm seeing references to another girlfriend he's in communication with. I don't know, kind of hard to keep all that in track. But let's go ahead and bring up Google Earth and take a look at these locations together. So this is the area of Latrobe, basically everything in this kind of red outline. We're going to see a few of these locations are actually just kind of outside of that. The apartment complex where she was living is called the Edgewater Village Apartments. And I'm not 100% sure that she was actually in the apartments. I believe so. I'm not finding a solid address on that. So I don't know if this Edgewater Village, if this whole area is kind of called Edgewater Village, or if she was literally in the apartments. I did find something on her Facebook page that talked about a particular street she was needing a piece of furniture moved to, but I'm not seeing that street around this. Maybe it wasn't for her home. Maybe she was finding something for her parents or something. I don't know. So that's the first location that's kind of important in all this. But let's go ahead and bring up my notes here. The next one would be where the vehicle was found, and that is close to the train tracks here. So let's go ahead. Twin Lakes Park up here to the north, and I've marked a spot on the train tracks. I don't know if this is accurate. They're not being extremely detailed about where on this section of train tracks. They just said at the train tracks close to Twin Lakes Park. So this is the approximate area where her vehicle is found. And then, of course, where is Baxter found? Baxter found way back over here. Not incredibly far from where the vehicle is, but not a lot of direct routes to where Baxter is found there. Of course, sure, a dog can go running through the woods or through the forest. I think, big consideration here is that Baxter is almost blind, or at least partially blind. There's another address that's going to come up here as we get through the facts that kind of ties some of these locations together in a way that certainly has me curious and investigators curious too, because we're going to see several searches go on in this area. So over at pittsburgh.cbslocal.com, boyfriend of missing Latrobe woman questioned. This is from April 12th, 2018. Like I said, things moving very fast on this case. State police spent hours Thursday searching a home and property on Macy Road in Unity Township. The home is owned by 47-year-old Thomas Stanko. And here is a picture of Thomas. Thomas, bit of a criminal history. We're going to go into several different charges that he's actually even currently still facing. And the location that they searched, the property owned by him, right down here. So just a little bit south of where she lives, south and west of where she is in the Edgewater Village Apartments. Stanko's attorney, David Schrager, said his client is a person of interest in the gross disappearance, but he said no one should read too much into that. Quote, unfortunately, due to Detective Work 101, of course he's going to be a person of interest. They're going to go around and talk to every person that she had close contact with because she is missing, and that's what police officers should do. Schrager said Stanko has nothing to hide, and in fact, he texted Gross the afternoon of the day she went missing. Other details I'm seeing on this made it sound like Stanko is saying that they had plans to do something, and he's basically texting her about those plans and just doesn't ever hear back. And I do want to say several news reports on this are making it sound like this is an on-again, off-again type relationship. The feeling I'm getting from the comments from her family is, no, this is off. This is a guy that was bad for her. There was even some physical altercation that happened at some point. She wound up having to get surgery to repair her rotator cuff for something that her family says he did to her. She had also made comments to people at the apartments that she lives at. I think she made a comment to a maintenance man about, hey, if anything ever happens to me, it's this guy. So there's a lot of warning indicators all around this. State police brought in a dog and a helicopter in their search of Thomas Stanko's property. They were not commenting on the search. And despite the fact that they're keeping things pretty close to the vest here, we do have one detective in particular that starts talking a little bit in terms of some of the developments that happen later. So we will get some type of comments from them, but let's go ahead and continue. Another article from Pittsburgh CBS Local, this one from April 13th, 2018. The next day, Thomas Stanko turned himself into police on Friday night. He's charged with receiving stolen property. Police have not said what the charges are related to or if they have anything to do with Gross. Earlier on Friday, authorities searched a pond near the property of Stanko's mother. And for the second day in a row, investigators walked and secured the area in and around his mother's home along White Fence Lane. So let's go ahead and bring the map back up real quick and take a look at his mother's home. Google Earth keeps wanting to rotate where north is, so that's why I keep having to recenter it for you guys. Okay, so here is his mother's house, and Google Earth actually just pinpointed this as an area of interest. Mr. Rogers' grave is in a cemetery that is very close to where his mother lives. As a matter of fact, I think parts of the cemetery are extremely close. I'm not 100% sure. I can't quite get close enough to see if these are grave markers, but just the layout of them kind of makes it look like that is to me. And his mother's home's right over here. So very close to this cemetery. This cemetery is going to come up more in this story as well. But in relation to where the vehicle is found and where the dog is found, take a look at this. Stanko's mother's house here. We got Baxter found down here. With a main road that kind of connects the two. It'd be pretty easy for me to understand or think of the possibility that Baxter could have been in this vicinity and wound up down here. If he jumped out of the vehicle, was removed from a vehicle, something along those lines. But then the discovery of the Mitsubishi over here, Twin Lakes Park, just the vicinity of both of these discoveries being so close to his mother's house, certainly suspicious, and I can understand why they're searching there. Dive teams departed the scene after several hours. Now, that's one thing. I haven't been able to identify what pond they were searching. Looks like there's a little... That might be it back here. But I'm not seeing a whole lot. Unfortunately, you do have a lot of just dense vegetation all around here. Certainly would make searching tough. I'm also wondering, and I know this is kind of a morbid thought, but we're talking years down the road now. I'm also thinking of the possibility of how effective would cadaver dogs be around a cemetery. And who knows? He seems to have a thing for this cemetery we're going to hear about in some other stories on him. I don't know. I don't know if dogs are thrown off in terms of cadaver smell by that. But state police served search warrants on Thomas Stanko's Latrobe property Thursday, searching the 47-year-old's trailer and grounds. Scent dogs also paced the property. Family members tell KDKA that Gross ended her brief relationship with Stanko, so they're saying it was off. Stanko, however, allegedly continued to pursue Gross. Relatives of the missing woman told KDKA that Stanko would stalk Gross, follow her while she was driving, and threaten her. Neighbors of the woman told KDKA that Stanko was even caught peering in the woman's Latrobe apartment. So we are getting pretty hard confirmation there that she does live in an apartment. So we might have that first location right. Does not sound like a good situation was going on here. And this is a photo of the man actually being brought in. Prosecutors aim to keep missing Unity woman's acquaintance jailed. This posted on April 18th, 2018. And essentially what happens is they start searching these properties, and they're kind of racking up charges, different charges not related to Cassandra. She also was known by Cassie, by her friends and family. Different charges not necessarily related to Cassie's disappearance, but important charges nonetheless. Thomas George Stanko, 57, is in the county jail after being unable to post bail on unrelated charges. What are these charges? First of all, in 2017, police arrested Stanko for punching a man at the Tin Lizzie bar in Youngstown, knocking out several of the victim's false teeth. Stanko was jailed last week on a $100,000 bond after police charged him with possession of a stolen ATV found on his property. Apparently, this ATV stolen a decade or two before. Stanko also was charged with weapons offenses after police found 28 guns at his mother's home, including 2 that were reported as stolen. There was an additional charge. They did a search on a cabin of his. They found a shotgun there with the serial number filed off of it. Those charges got thrown out of court basically because the judge said, you guys didn't have due cause to go searching that property for a gun in particular. And from what I understand, he was writing letters, or he was on the phone, I can't remember which, with his mother and some unnamed girlfriend. And he was telling them about this cabin. Hey, be sure to go to the cabin and check on some things for me. And that led law enforcement to say, hey, is he trying to... Basically, law enforcement was saying he's talking to them in code about getting rid of the gun that's over at the cabin. The judge did not see it that way. He said, nope. So that charge completely dropped. But this other charge with numerous guns found at his mother's home does get filed. Schreger says he believes those guns were mostly owned by Stanko's deceased father. Police said Stanko was barred from owning any firearms as part of a plea deal stemming from a 1993 case in which he was charged with shooting at a former state police trooper's home in Latrobe. Stanko pleaded guilty in 1995 to retaliation and intimidation against a witness and was sentenced to 14 and a half to 29 months in prison. Just the stuff we're hearing about this guy on the legal front in terms of his interaction with police, this string of charges that he has going back decades, the types of interactions. It is just really a shame that Cassie didn't know what type of person she was getting involved with. I'm pretty sure any single woman would go running in the exact opposite direction of this guy if they knew about these types of charges. But jumping over to WPXI.com with another update, attorney for ex-boyfriend of missing woman moving to get him released from jail on the unrelated charges. I don't think that's completely unheard of. Of course, his attorney is going to try those maneuvers. And to be fair, it seems like the prosecutors are really drumming up these charges to get him kind of locked up while they're still processing Cassie's case and trying to figure out what happened to her. And then hopefully those new charges are going to piggyback on all this and just keep this guy in jail for a long, long time. I'm really surprised based on some of these other things we've heard about him that he isn't already in jail for a long time just based off that stuff. But David Schreger said keeping Stanko in jail has no positive impact on the community or Stanko. I think that's questionable, especially on the community. But it actually has a negative impact on his family and his personal and financial situations. Stanko currently has a detainer on him for a probation violation, and that stems from the charges involving the stolen ATV. He was in court for a separate hearing related to a bar fight from 2017, which we talked about, but that case was continued. The detainer is the only thing keeping Stanko in jail because his family posted his $26,000 bond in his other pending cases. So just about as quick as this attorney's trying to get him out, of course, we've got the other side really working to keep him in. Ex-boyfriend of missing Unity woman ordered to prison in separate case. After being ordered to prison, her mother, Cassie's mother, gestured at Stanko with a thumbs up and addressed him. "Way to go, Tom," she said. "I'd like to see him rot in hell." Her quote. Following a lengthy hearing, Judge Feliciani ordered Stanko to serve an additional 2 to 4 years in prison in connection with an incident at a Unity cemetery in 2015. That involved 5 counts of simple assault and reckless endangerment for threatening 5 people with a gun during a midnight memorial service. Can you imagine this? you're going there for a service and some guy coming out of the woods threatening you with a weapon, apparently, from the details I'm seeing. And it's interesting because they actually had already given him a sentence for this. But basically, because of what happened with his probation and because of that now being revoked, they're now looking at this charge again and they're saying, you know what? Yeah, we're gonna extend that out. We're gonna make this a larger sentence. The judge last month revoked Stanko's probation and parole for those offenses, saying new criminal charges as well as evidence that he was drunk and potentially involved in the bar fight. And the fact that that happened apparently on the same day that his house arrest portion of a different sentence expired merited a new sentence for these charges, tacking on another few years. The judge ordered Stanko to serve out the remaining portion of the original 23-month jail sentence and tacked on an additional 2 to 4 years in prison. He will also serve 2 years on probation after his release. So we do have at least him thankfully taken off the streets for a decent period of time. The question is now, can this missing persons investigation shift into a homicide investigation? Can they make a case? And are they going to win that case to keep him in jail? Assuming that he is our actual suspect in this case, of course. He's innocent until proven guilty. Sure, things don't look good. But honestly, you'll notice that even in the coverage we're talking about here today, we're looking into the history of his charges. We're looking into really limited information in terms of Cassandra's disappearance or what's happening around that. So trying to weigh it and say, oh, he's definitely the guy, not as easy from this seat. But as we go through this information, I think you're going to see it's very clear from prosecutors and from law enforcement working this case, they think they got the right guy. Over at triblive.com, Unity man charged in cemetery threats. Thomas G. Stanko. So this is now rewinding the clock for us to learn more about what happened at the cemetery back in 2015. He was charged with making terroristic threats, criminal mischief, reckless endangerment, and simple assault. State police went to the cemetery between 8:30 and 9 p.m. September 14th when a family leaving in 2 cars after visiting a gravesite said they were threatened by a man who pointed a silver handgun at them. I'm actually tripping up on this a little bit because I'm not 100% sure that those details are the same. I mean, we are talking 2015, so we do have the year right. But this is, I mean, maybe it's not literally a midnight service. Maybe they were just there in the evening. It's just the time frame is kind of throwing me off. Threatening 5 people. Here they're saying that a man pointed a silver handgun at family leaving in 2 cars. Yeah, that could certainly be 5 people. I think this is the same instance. So when the troopers arrived, they saw a couple driving a white late model Pontiac Grand Prix and stopped to question them. Who is the couple? It's Stanko and a girlfriend from then who's not identified. Stanko was the passenger in the car. He matched the description of the man who was reported as carrying the handgun in the cemetery. Stanko told troopers that he and the female driver were driving in the cemetery looking around because earlier in the evening, someone had repeatedly knocked on the door of his mother's nearby home where he was living. Now let's just take it back to the map for a second. Is it possible someone comes driving down this road, misses, the chapel for the cemetery is right here. There is a gate. It looks like it's somewhat clear, but I got to tell you, at night in particular, for being at this location, I don't know that there's streetlights around here. We got power poles, but I'm not seeing much for streetlights. So is it possible someone missed the turn for the cemetery, came up on the next sign, which is reflective, which is basically saying that there's a hidden driveway, made the right on the hidden driveway, and accidentally went up the driveway to his mother's road? Yes, I think that's absolutely possible. Missed the chapel. Hey, something's wrong. Oh, there's a driveway here. Maybe this is it. They turn on the driveway and it leads them directly to his mother's home. Do they go up at that point, knock on the door? Hey, we're trying to find the cemetery. Maybe. Why no one answers the door? He's obviously there, or someone's there. They're hearing that there's a knock at the door. They decide not to answer it, but instead he's going to drive out later with his girlfriend, go cruising the cemetery with a gun. This is the decision that he makes based off that. So Stanko said that he saw people running in the cemetery with flashlights, and he went to investigate. He stated that although he was in the cemetery earlier, he was not in possession of a handgun. He stated that while he was in the cemetery, he tried to confront someone in a vehicle, and they refused to stop and almost ran him over. So he punched at the driver's window as the vehicle sped off. So this certainly lining up with, two families saying that they were paying their respects, and some guy comes out while they're trying to leave in their car. Troopers noticed cuts and blood on Stanko's hand, and then Stanko consented to a search of the vehicle, and guess what they find? A loaded silver 9mm handgun in a console. Another thing about this handgun being in the vehicle, the problem is I think that it's probably his girlfriend's vehicle, and maybe ownership at that point was questionable as well. But I'm pretty sure this is in his parole period where he's not supposed to own weapons at this point. I mean, that's really the big part of the problem with all these weapons that they're finding at his mother's house. And is this guy smart enough to, hey, it's not my gun, it's my girlfriend's. Hey, it's not my cache of guns. They're in my mother's house. Those all belong to my father. I don't know. Jumping over to WTAE.com. State police have not said what keeps bringing them to the cemetery. They keep searching at the cemetery. It was previously searched in June, and at this point, when this article is from July 20th, they actually go back there and conduct more searches. But they are saying that they're confident that someone in Unity Township knows something about the 51-year-old Latrobe missing woman, about Cassandra Gross. Trooper Stephen Lamani said, I can understand that people are concerned and there's lots of questions. Unfortunately, because of the sensitivity of the case and the fact that Miss Gross has been missing for quite some time, we're trying to keep the information as close guarded as we can. We eat, sleep, and breathe this case to try to find her, and we're not going to stop until we do, he said. And from law enforcement side, he basically becomes the face of the investigation in terms of the media. He's the one that's commenting to the media most. I do want to note, I originally caught wind of this case by someone who contacted me saying that they worked on this case at some point. They weren't clear with who they were. They weren't clear with how they worked on it. And I didn't want to really press into that. It was enough when I saw the details of this case that I was like, okay, I got to help raise the flag on this case. We've got a family waiting for justice. There might be someone out there that has a very big piece of this puzzle that can help push this investigation where it needs to go, or help solidify it for the DA, wherever that stopgap is that's stopping this thing from being prosecuted. There's someone out there that has the answer to it. And there's money on the table for that person if they're willing to come forward and share it. So that's what we're trying to do here today. Of course, we've got all the contact details that you need in the description box down below. Over at AJC.com, we hit that point in a missing persons investigation that's almost inevitable. A few months pass by, family isn't hearing about progress, and they start reaching out to the media. It's been nearly 6 months since a Pittsburgh area woman was last seen, and now the investigation has gone cold. Her family and friends are taking matters into their own hands. Interestingly, based on the comments I see from law enforcement, I don't think law enforcement ever considers this case as gone cold. And the searches that happen, like we have the cemetery being searched, his mother's house being searched, we're going to see that stuff kind of continues through the years as well. But at least the perception of what the family's going through here is, hey, the phones aren't ringing off the hook. We still don't have our answers. We still don't have justice. Quote, I want my daughter found. I'm tired of the police not searching and not giving us permission to search. I want to find her. I want to bring her home, Cassandra's mother, Kathy Gross, said. And to help raise their voice around this time, the family starts having organized gatherings. I wouldn't really say it's like a protest, but September 29th, 2018, armed with signs, t-shirts, and bracelets, family and friends of Cassandra Gross lined a busy stretch of Route 30 in Latrobe. The family continues to offer a $10,000 reward for information that leads to an arrest. Jumping over to pittsburgh.cbslocal.com, this one from November 14th, 2018. So we can see we're getting to the end of 2018. We still don't have any firm answers here. A Westmoreland County woman has been missing since April, and her family is now requesting that she be declared dead. This moves extremely fast. Typically in these missing persons cases, I don't see the family push for this literally within the first year. From what I understand, there are a couple of financial things, like I think she's got the, I don't know if it's a lease or if she's making payments on the car, but how does that get handled? Any debts that she owes, like how are those getting paid off? So there's reasons for families to do this kind of stuff. Does it really help in terms of the criminal investigation? Based on information I'm seeing from another attorney who kind of just consulted to a news agency on this, not really. It doesn't really help. It's not like they could point over to that and say, like, this is a civil matter. It's not that like they're going to say, hey, we have proof that she's dead because this judge over there decided that she was. So that attorney, it was his opinion. It wasn't going to be super helpful in terms of criminal charges. This is really more of, freeing up whatever resources are available in terms of her finances to make sure that there's not some crazy debt that's mounting up. It's something along those lines, trying to just level things up. Kathy Gross says, I know my daughter's dead. Now the missing Latrobe woman's son, Brandon Diebold, has filed a death declaration petition, citing various reasons that the court should declare his mother dead, including numerous searches conducted without success. None of Gross's financial accounts have been touched outside of automated withdrawals. There have been nothing else going on with those accounts. State police told Diebold that they have substantial amount of circumstantial evidence that his mother is dead. I'm a little scared at hearing circumstantial evidence. For some reason, some district attorney's offices are okay running circumstantial evidence cases, no body homicide cases, and others completely shy away from it, just won't do it. So I'm just a little concerned that term came up in terms of this process. However, it's got to be something substantial because it turns out that the judge actually does grant it. So by January of 2019, Cassie has been declared deceased. A judge has declared that Cassandra Gross was exposed to a specific peril of death and that the facts indicate she was the victim of homicide. That's the official ruling there. In terms of the money it frees up, I think she had like $9,000 in accounts and then a retirement fund of some kind worth about $30,000. And from what I understand, I think her debts actually exceeded that stuff. So I hope the family was able to get all that kind of lined up and not have to deal with those, it's weird to think about automatic payments and that kind of stuff just rolling on forever. I think about it myself, like what happens after I've got all these payments going to all these different people? What happens to that stuff? Over at WPXI.com, more than a year after the disappearance of Cassandra Gross, people are getting together to search for her. So we see another shift here. I don't know if it's because of the family's comments before or if the family just decides, hey, we're not going to listen to law enforcement anymore, but we're going to start doing our own searches. The Latrobe woman's family is encouraging everyone to come out to weekly searches, saying the more ground that they cover, the better. So a little shift there in terms of the investigation. But does that mean police are done searching? Not quite. We're going to see some more searches that happen here. Search for long missing Latrobe woman brings state police to Twin Lakes Park. So they're going back to the location where the vehicle was found. Here we go. And decide to go looking. And honestly, you've got a bunch of land around this. You've got giant water sources. On Searchlight, I'm always extremely leery of water sources. I haven't seen anything in terms of in-depth searches outside of the mention of the pond. I haven't seen anything in terms of in-depth water searches really happen around this case. Side sonar scans, anything like that. I don't know if they have some reason to rule that out. I don't know why you wouldn't do those types of searches when you have a vehicle found so close to significant water sources like this. But from what I understand, that's just, that hasn't been part of the game plan. So they go back there, and this is now January 31st of 2020. State troopers and students and faculty from the Seton Hill University Forensics Department searched an area near Twin Lakes Park. There was information that we worked with to come forward and thought maybe today would be a good day to come out and try to conduct a search, said Trooper Steve Lamani. Unfortunately, I just can't go in depth in terms of what that information is. So it sounds like, I don't know if they're talking to someone or if they developed something through testing of evidence, but it sounds like they got a new lead that actually kind of brought them back to this location. He says, we're really concerned about doing everything we can to try to give them some closure and hopefully find her. So a few months later, in May of 2020, we've got another search effort. Investigators bring in excavator. After troopers received new information, they immediately worked to obtain a signed search warrant. This is for going back to his mother's house. Quote, this is just a little bit of information that we received that we thought was very valuable. And obviously there was a judge that concurred with us because they signed the warrant, said Trooper Lamani. Criminal investigators from state police, along with Unity Township municipal workers, brought an excavator onto the property where Thomas Stanko's mother currently lives along White Fence Lane. From what I understand, they had to go for a warrant because they asked her if they could do a search there, and she actually denied them. So they went to the judge with this new information, got the warrant, and then went back there. So interesting, just once again, to get back to the map, we're kind of bouncing. Like, yes, they did do an initial search at his property. Another thing I'm kind of curious about, I'm sure that her family let them in to search her apartment. I'm just wondering about the conditions. Like, if this is a story about him driving around, following her around, did he follow her back from that meal she had with her friend? Was there something that happened in the parking lot? Like, even if this is like, if you almost imagine like kind of a carjacking situation, that would mean that like his vehicle gets left here. Like, I would just think there's some footprint of him being in this area that might be able to be picked up. But these searches that we're hearing about, particularly in 2020, very, very heavily focused on this area. We've got the cemetery, his mother's house, Twin Lakes Park, and it's almost like you could draw a line in these cross sections. It's like everything is pointing to his mother's house. About this latest search, he says, we are on the backside of the property and there's about 20 people all together. He said that they've already searched the home on the property and the nearby cemetery, but now they want to search deeper into those woods that are surrounding these areas. And jumping over to Pittsburgh.cbs local, state police said they have found some items of interest. So this is literally the next day. They're saying they found some things that they're interested by. They're not going to be very clear about what these things are. State police were not releasing details about what those items are, but said they plan to take the time to analyze everything they found. Officials say their search is working in shifts. Crews will continue into the afternoon. So this is the second day. They're actually still processing the site. But they're looking to wrap things up the evening of the second day unless they find something monumental. There are some areas we were concerned about and we wanted to dig some of the ground. We were analyzing and sifting through the dirt, and that is what we're doing for the rest of the day. We have a dog on the property as well. Now, Lamani was clear. I can tell you we haven't found human remains, but we have found items that are interesting to us, and we're going to send them out for further analysis. Sounds like forensic testing needs to be conducted on some of these items they're finding. Could it be stuff related to her, possibly? Could it be objects that they think are related to the crime? Maybe. But the way they're going about it, if they're finding objects that they think is related to any crime concerning this guy, they're going to process those too. And it looks like they're going to try to file new charges. But murder charges anticipated. We get to the end of 2020, December 18th, and we have them saying, hey, charges are coming for this guy. After a court hearing in which the lawyer for Thomas Stanko asked a judge to dismiss pending criminal cases filed after Gross's disappearance in April of 2018, the DA, the assistant district attorney, Pete Flanagan, said the investigation into her apparent death is nearing completion. I just want you to take a moment and put yourself in the family's shoes. Reading an article like this, getting a phone call from someone saying, hey, the assistant DA says we're about done here. I think that would ramp them up in terms of Thank God they're finally going to find justice. They're going to make sure this guy doesn't get back out there again. Does it go quite that smoothly? Unfortunately, it doesn't. But back to the quote, "We anticipate filing criminal homicide charges against him for her death," Flanagan said. "We will file them when the time is right." Gross's mother, Kathy, said she was recently told by prosecutors that murder charges would be filed against Stanko. "I wish they would hurry up and bring it to trial," she said. "It's almost 3 years, and that's a long time when you're in my shoes." Kathy Gross and family members continue to search for her daughter and evidence of her remains. Stanko has been in jail since April 2018, and through defense attorney Dante Bertani, so it sounds like his legal team changes, he's denied any involvement or knowledge of Gross's death. "They're full of crap," Bertani said. I would not have a defense attorney that makes quotes like that, but I mean, it's to the media. I mean, come on. Anyway, "They're full of crap," Bertani said, in response to statements made about the potential charges filed against his client. "If you want to find out if he killed that girl, let him out of jail. If he did it, within an hour, he'll go see where she is and if she's still there." Like, does this guy just have a second of thought about, wait, this missing girl's mother is going to read this? Especially if you think that your client's actually innocent. And outside of that, does this guy live in an episode of NCIS? What is he talking about? Really? That's how simple it is? Well, we should just let all the murderers out of jail for a day, see where they go. It's kind of insane. Like, I don't think this guy's helping himself or his client with quotes like this, but Bertani is seeking a dismissal of other cases pending against Stanko involving allegations that he was in possession of a stolen ATV. And let me just say, I saw the other attorney kind of make some comments about the ATV. He tried to boil it down to, hey, look, people sell ATVs, man, and sometimes you don't do the paperwork, and that's just what happened here. Well, law enforcement is saying when they got onto the property, it looked like someone was trying to hide the stolen ATV, like it was under a bunch of, like a wood pile, basically. And outside of that, they found communication when Stanko was in prison of him writing a letter, once again, to a girlfriend, where he was asking her to fake the receipt for the ATV and then to intentionally age it by putting it in an oven to make it look like it was 14 years old. So, I mean, they've got everything on this ATV case, I would think, based off having that type of information. But he's trying to get it thrown out. Honestly, he has kind of a decent reason. We're going to hear more about that. They also want to throw out the charge for violated terms of a drunken driving sentence, conspired with his mother to steal government benefits, and assault allegations back to that fight in the Youngwood bar in 2017. Bertani argued Stanko's speedy trial rights were violated because more than 2 years have passed since the first charges were filed in state court. He does have right to a speedy trial. But, quote, "The district attorney has violated every right this defendant has. They wanted to keep him in jail as long as they can," Bertani said. Being an outsider looking at this situation, don't you guys feel like that too? Yeah, kind of feels like that. Don't we see that as kind of a regular mechanism in cases like this, that other charges will kind of come about? They'll keep the person in prison while the investigation is run, and then the new charges come. Sometimes the old charges drop off. Yeah, we kind of see that. Has that been going on here, and has it been going on for too long? So now these original charges are actually going to fall apart? Flanagan said the trial delays were caused by the pending federal weapons case, which must be disposed of before federal marshals return Stanko to state custody. The federal prosecution has been routinely postponed at Stanko's request, he said. So we've got federal charges that are taking precedent over these state charges effectively, and they're delaying everything. And the DA's office, this is just their quote, they're saying that that process has been stalled out basically because of Stanko, because of motions they're filing or things he's requesting or things he's doing there. Now, what does Cassie's mother have to say about this possibility that, hey, they're going to file murder charges on this guy? If he's convicted and found guilty, I own him. I own every breath. I own every meal he eats. I own every clanking of the cell door because he thought he owned my daughter. Now I'll own him, she said. If that statement, if you don't feel that, it's just such a clear expression of the pain that she's going through and the intended relief that she's going to get knowing that he's in jail specifically for those charges. He's been in jail. That's not enough. She wants him to know he's in jail because of what he did to Cassie. Unfortunately, we get to April 2021. We still haven't seen those charges, and there's some risk to them being filed. District Attorney John Peck said the original prosecutor involved with the case has left his office, and Peck plans to examine the evidence state police have gathered. So basically, it sounds like the DA is effectively reevaluating the case as of April 2021. The case is still very actively and intensely being investigated, Peck said. State police are quite confident that they'll be able to solve the case. Really concerning to me because this is a step back. I mean, from where the last guy was talking about, hey, this thing's just about done. We're ready to press charges. Now we're hearing, no, this is still going on, and state police are confident they'll be able to solve the case. That really makes it sound like Peck's perspective is they don't have it done yet. He doesn't have what he needs in that case file yet. But it's not soon enough for Kathy Gross. I've just been trying to get them to take it to trial, and I can't get anybody moving. 3 years of living in hell, making path after path, and I can't find the way, she said. I think about her every day, but on the 7th, keep in mind this is now the 3-year anniversary. I just have to try to get through the day, her mother says. The day seems to go on forever and ever. May 17th would be Cassie's 55th birthday, and unfortunately this article also notes that Baxter passed away in 2020. Another quote from Kathy here. I know they've been working hard and state police have worked hard, but it's time to move. Over at Trib Live, we get a little more information from Peck in terms of his perspective, what's going on, what's hanging this up. District Attorney John Peck says that the case has been delayed because of turnover in his office. So he's, saying, hey, the last guy working it quit. What am I supposed to do? The prosecutor who was handling the case left within the past year, forcing Peck to take over. Quote, I'm making a very careful and thorough review of the record, he said, which I just read as he's reevaluating the case. The case also has been slowed by the fact that Stanko is in federal custody on gun charges, Peck said, asserting that his office cannot proceed with homicide charges until Stanko is in custody in Westmoreland County. Peck said he has spoken to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Pittsburgh, and they're in talks to, quote, have Stanko released from federal custody so the homicide case can ensue. Peck also said that even if homicide charges were filed against Stanko tomorrow, the trial process could drag out for another year or more. I don't think her family cares. Yes, everyone knows that. Everyone knows the reality of that. But getting to that point where you guys are actually filing those charges, I think is going to be a little bit of a sigh of relief that they've been looking for, I think, very strongly since December of 2020, when they had a prosecutor saying, hey, we're going to do this. It's not going to be resolved quickly, Peck said. I just feel expectation management all over Peck's comments. And it feels like he's setting this up to reverse position, just in my mind. I sincerely hope that's not the case. But there's some other challenges that happen with this, as we'll see as we continue forward. But before we get to that, another article from the 3rd anniversary. This is Tammy Klingensmith, who is a cousin, and she's out there with a sign trying to raise exposure, help bring her family peace, missing but still in our hearts. Klingensmith and her husband Patrick have continued to try to draw attention to the Gross case in multiple ways. We've done several rallies and done lots of searches. They organized 2 afternoons of rallies on the weekend of that anniversary. We just want to keep her name out there. On Sunday afternoon, the Klingensmiths were joined by about half a dozen people who were reciting the rosary. Passing cars occasionally honked in support of their signs, bearing messages like, help bring her family peace, missing but still in our hearts. Klingon-Smith said Cassandra Gross was such a fun-loving person and she could be a bit of a comedian, but most of all, she was a good person and she didn't deserve this. Now, what about that motion filed by Stanko's attorney to drop those charges? It goes through. 3 old cases against Unity men linked to women's disappearance dismissed. Westmoreland County Judge Timothy Krieger ruled prosecutors took too long to bring Thomas G. Stanko to trial in the cases unrelated to the disappearance, 2 of them from 2018 and a third from 2017. The DA, John Peck, is considering an appeal of the ruling. I think he did file it based on another article I saw as well. The problem has been with Stanko that he's indicted in federal court and can't be released from their custody until that case is resolved, Peck said. Stanko's defense attorney, Dante Bertani, requested the dismissal in May, arguing prosecutors violated the state's speedy trial rules. Those rules require that cases go before a judge or jury within 6 months after an arrest for those in jail, and a year for defendants not in custody. In all, Stanko has been incarcerated for more than 3 years as he awaits disposition of cases filed against him in federal and state court. Authorities have until the end of the month to set a trial date on a federal indictment in connection with 17 guns. Finally, in November of 2021, we see that Stanko actually pleads guilty to those federal level gun charges. Apparently this happens outside of this. There's no special plea deal or agreement that has happened with this charge. Sentencing for these charges, they say, is going to take place in 120 days from November 9th. So I think we're looking in the February area for those charges. Hopefully that's going to keep him in jail for another number of years is what I'm hoping. But that also helps, I think, things move forward for possibly a murder charge coming at some point in this year. At least that's really what I'm hoping for this family. But back to a comment from Kathy Gross, who is saddled with all of these decisions that are completely out of her hands and expectations being laid by employees that then leave and then new employees come in and change the expectation. I live this, I eat it, I sleep it, I dream it. I'm on it 24/7. There's not a day that goes by that I'm not doing something, she said. They're not going to pay anybody. Nobody's going to come forward. The police have everything they're ever going to get and they know it. And according to police, they're waiting on the district attorney to make his move. It does seem like the ball is really in Peck's court in terms of moving things forward here. I also wanted to share this quote directly from Kathy herself.
There is no justice for the family. We have to go on without her. So no matter what happens to him or anybody else that does something like this, the family still has to live through it.
She's going to have to live with it even if the DA does decide to move forward, then go through the year or two wait, sit in the trial, which you know she's going to do. She's already been sitting in every other trial for this guy. And even if they get the conviction, they still have to go home and live with this. Her daughter is never coming back. If you have information that can help her, and I know it sounds like she doesn't think the info's out there. She thinks the police have everything that they're going to have. Someone out there knows. Maybe he spoke to somebody. Maybe they noticed something. They just haven't come forward. Please find it in your heart to do that. Please help this family. There are a few ways you can do that. Of course, we've got contact information in the detail box down below. The Pennsylvania Crime Stoppers is now holding the $10,000 reward, and that could be for an anonymous tip as well. If you need to remain anonymous for some reason, this is the way to do it. We've got their information down below as well as the direct information. If you just want to contact law enforcement, you're able to be upfront with who you are. You don't have those concerns. Those details are down there as well. I did find a Facebook group. It's Bring Cassie Home. Haven't seen a lot of updates on it. Looks like the last post might be from 2020. Basically, it's keeping track of the articles that had come out up to that point. But if you want to stay up to date on this case, this might be a decent place to do it. Of course, if we see updates, I'll also do Wednesday update shows about this case as well. And Web Sleuths, always a great source for staying up to date on cases. They've got a conversation that's been going on this case since it started, all the way through to today. So please jump over to Web Sleuths, be part of a great community there. To Cassie's friends and family, we are really sorry that you don't have her in your lives at this point. And we really, truly hope that you get every answer you're looking for in terms of what happened, where she is, maybe even a proper memorial for her at some point. There's just so many things that go on pause with these cases. You can't imagine just the emotional processes that get completely stopped, like grief. Like being able to just simply grieve and say, yeah, we found her. We know, yes, we have a judge that ruled that she is deceased. But we know in our heart of hearts, we know 100% because we have remains. We know that Cassie's no longer with us. They can't even get to that point. So if they can't get to that point, what's the next best thing? I hope that DA Peck looks in that case file, sees the same thing that the last prosecutor did and says, oh, okay, this is ready to go. And let's get this back on the tracks for this family. A big thank you to everyone that keeps us on the tracks here at the Lorden Arts channel. We can't do it without your guys' support. For over 6 years now, we've been doing these presentations, always with limited commercials. It's because of amazing people out there just like you. A big thanks to new patrons, Crimson Topaz. Crimson Topaz, a friend to the channel in so many ways. Thank you so much for all the support. New patron, Melissa Ridner. And new patron Night Owl. Also a shout out to Emily, who increased her pledge. If you'd like to help support us, please visit lordenarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even just buy us a coffee like Francisca from AVO Magazine recently did. We really appreciate everyone that helps support the channel. We also appreciate those of you that help support these cases by sharing these stories. If you have friends or family in the Pennsylvania area, please share this information with them. Let's get more eyes open. Someone out there knows something. We need them to do the right thing here. Maybe this video is going to be the thing that helps promote that. You could be a part of that too. So please share this video with them. Take care, everyone. Have a nice weekend. We'll be back on Monday with a new episode of Case Cracked. I want this case to be on Case Cracked. Maybe you could be a part of that, but we'll see you again here on the Lorden Arts channel.